Fashionably late this morning just adds to the drama from a dramatic weekend. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr, Ryan Snyder, and Sean Fitz with me on the BWI Live Show. Recruiting and football reaction from Saturday. Penn State wins a walk-off fashion, basically, over Indiana. We're going to get into the game. We're going to get into the players that were there and the implications of some of those players for the future of Penn State football. But as always, we're getting to your questions in the chat. Greg Fischel is here early. I made the joke, took a question from him on the live show on Saturday, and I said, well, Greg, and I didn't know if we were friends enough because it was Gregory Fischel on the show to call him Greg. But Greg is here. He has a question we'll get to a little bit later because I want to get to our experts and their thoughts to start off the show of what they saw and their feelings from the game on Saturday. So, Fitz, I want to start with you. Off the top, thoughts about that game. I know your instant reaction was nonplussed. Anything changed from that since after the game?
Yeah, I'm a little more plussed now. Looking at the recap, looking at the game again. I mean, there were some good things in there, which, there's been a lot of nothing, especially in the offensive side of almost exclusively on the offensive side of the ball. But they did do some nice things that would be encouraging if you're continuing to build this. And I know we're 8 games in, so you're not really looking at the building stage, especially with Michigan 2 weeks away. But they did do some nice things. Glad they got the interception out of the way. Tired of hearing about that. Whether that means anything or not, I don't know. But it seemed to open up some things, for a couple plays later with a touchdown. So some tiny positives, some steps forward. So the more you look at it, the more you're okay with it. Now, you shouldn't need that against Indiana, of course. Indiana is not a good football team, although played better on Saturday than I think anyone that watched any tape on Indiana this year would have seen. Especially the receivers kind of came out and did some things like that we did not expect. I mean, you don't need that, or you don't want to need that against Indiana. But it's nice to see these responses. We talked all week about all week leading up to Ohio State. You had to make the extra play. Penn State went out and did that. And, regardless of the competition, stepping up and making those plays when it counts is something that mattered. And on top of that, Penn State's defense has been great to elite all season long. They were not on Saturday. And for Penn State to be able to sort of pivot and spin on their head, they were able to do some nice things. So overall, obviously a disappointment in terms of a 9-point win when you're a 31-point favorite. That is one column, but in the same thing, I think they made some little strides that are positives.
Yeah, I think something Nate and I were talking about. Nate Bauer, of course, senior editor of Blue White Illustrated. Great time to remind you, sign up for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, get inside access. All of my thoughts really are going to be in T. Frank's film room. We've got one up right now about the passing game, run game coming up later, but insights from everybody on Sunday. You can get BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. If you sign up right now, get all of that insight. Nate brought this up that they haven't had a whole lot of close games. They haven't had a whole lot of games that have been into the fourth quarter where they've had to go and win it in a clutch situation. We finally had a situation where we saw them do that on Saturday against Indiana. Yeah, but there's a check off a box of a thing we haven't seen from them in a while. Ryan, I want to come to you, your high-level thoughts on Penn State, Indiana, and your observations from the game.
Well, give Indiana credit because they came and played their best game of the year so far, I thought. And I know it was a loss, taken away. Look, they barely beat Akron. What was the other one? Indiana State. And if you look at their Big Ten games, this was their best game of the year. And hey, man, college football, we talk, obviously we used to do the gambling thing all the time. When teams are losing and losing and losing, they're bound to break through at some point. And I felt like Indiana, this was the game that they really stepped up their game. Now, at the same time, Penn State's defense, secondary, certainly had my attention. I felt Zakee Wheatley had a big mistake there. KJ Winston coming up, especially on a cornerback blitz with Johnny Dixon allowing that other touchdown. I mean, there's just some things we haven't seen from this defense this year. That certainly stood out a bit to me, and that needs to get worked on. But Aller responding when we haven't had to see him respond in a moment yet, right? And
yeah,
for the most part all year, we wondered, okay, what's going to happen when he needs to step up and make a play, and he did that. And I think that's big. And I know a lot of people right now are lukewarm on Drew and lukewarm really on the offense overall. But when you go back and watch that game, we're going to get into Drew a little bit, so I don't want to get into it all right now. But he made some really important throws. 3rd and 22, a big throw to Keandre on 3rd and 9. I mean, we can go back and dissect it here a little bit later. But when I watched it again, I thought he played better than what I thought when I was watching the game.
Yeah, which is always interesting when people, I think the PFF grade, we discussed that ad nauseum on the board, but there's a sense of the throws you don't make and the mistakes you don't make that is rolled into that analysis, even if you're not looking, some of the plays on third down and some of the dead plays in this offense are an issue, but those aren't all directly tied to the quarterback, even though he has the ball in his hands on almost every single play. Guys, want to tell you about our sponsor of today's show, and that is My Perfect Franchise. If you're looking to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, maybe you want a side hustle. I'm a side hustler. Before I started here at Blue White Illustrated, had about 14 different jobs. I love the idea of passive income, personally. Maybe it's more direct than passive. You can do a bunch of different things with Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. He's a franchise consultant with extensive experience placing people like you into the business they were born to manage. And born isn't even the right word. That they were designed to manage. The work and the things that you have done throughout your life to gain expertise that other people don't have could land you a lucrative business that will help you determine the future going forward. His services are 100% free. He's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. Check out Blue White Illustrated on the message board or message him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net to get started today. I've enjoyed talking to Andy. I love learning things about different parts of life that I have no knowledge of whatsoever. So home services are big right now. If you want to get into, a business remodeling houses with interest rates being as high as they are, this is a great time for you to start investing in that part of your future. There's a whole bunch of different things that he's tracking at the same time because he's got experience owning these things himself. And of course, I love the fact that when we met with him, per capita, more Blue White Illustrated message board members have reached out than any other message board or one of the top 5 within On3, and Andy has worked with On3 for quite a while now. So join those people, including somebody who is starting a painting franchise at the Blue White Illustrated family, by messaging Andy at 404-973-9901. Thanks again to Andy. I'm going to put this question up here because this is kind of jumping off what Ryan just said. And it's also kind of a broad, let's start the conversation around this. Greg asks, first off, he says, you can call me Greg, and thanks for being frank with me. Drew Aller said schools who recruited him, their negative recruiting pitch was Penn State doesn't develop quarterbacks. Are they right? And do we have the ability to know that yet, Fitz? We got you on mute for some reason?
Muted.
When you go do the ad thing, that's when I go mute just in case my dogs start barking or something. So yeah, I'm right back in it. Want to know this week. Anyway, that's been the pitch with Franklin ever since he got here, really. Like, you look at, he came into Hackenberg, who had the reputation that he had with Bill O'Brien, and then all of a sudden, things did not go well. So that has stuck with him that entire time. I mean, this is nothing new. This is not a situation where you're talking about Joe Moorhead, Ricky Ronnie, Mike Yursich, whatever. It's been a thing that, hey, Franklin doesn't develop quarterbacks, and it's an easy one to latch on to. I mean, look at our message board. So it's a situation where you have to work against that, and you have to trust the guy. He obviously trusts Mike Yursich to do that. Are they good at developing quarterbacks? I mean, the last 3 quarterbacks have all been drafted. Like, that is something that not every school can say. So like that's your counterpoint to that. Now, obviously, Trace was not like a bona fide NFL prospect. Clifford, we thought, was going to go undrafted, went in the 5th round. So there are layers and caveats to that. But Penn State has put quarterbacks in the NFL. So some gray area there. They've had good college quarterbacks, which is obviously the name of the game. If you're a college coach, you want to win football games. Penn State's won a lot of football games with those guys, but at the same time, they haven't had a 1st round pick. This is the guy, you think you can develop into a 1st round pick, and you're going to see whether that happens over the next couple of years. So I mean, I think there's been truth to that. Like, I don't think it's saying a secret. Like, Penn State has not developed quarterbacks at the level that other schools in the conference have. I mean, you look at Ohio State, where they were at before they started this assembly line of quarterback. They have found themselves in a spot where the quarterbacks flock to them. Penn State's not in that spot. Penn State won't be in that spot unless they turn Drew into a high round draft pick. So I think there's something to that. But at the same time, I mean, you got to filter out all the BS. That's recruiting. That's not just a Penn State thing. That's not just a quarterback thing. You got to filter all this stuff out. So Penn State has a lot working against it when you're talking about recruiting quarterbacks. And really, that's nothing new.
So kind of folding in a different element of this, Ryan, to ask you a different question to kind of move the conversation forward. Will Levis playing well on Sunday, point or counterpoint to Penn State? And then to what Fitz was saying, like, does the clock really start because they haven't had a guy with NFL talents the same way, other than Will, that you can make a tangible difference in the recruiting conversation to the counterpoint of, like, look at what this guy became?
You had to throw Levis in there, didn't you?
Man, I'm so glad you got Levis.
You had to throw Levis at me, didn't you? So what I would say is, look, there's only a handful of elite quarterbacks every year. And when we talk about development, when people talk about development, a lot of the guys that are developed and go on to be those first-round draft picks are a lot of the same guys who are 5 stars and elite prospects right off the bat. And Penn State isn't normally getting those guys. Aller is the first one. You know, we go back to Levis. What was Levis, Sean? A 3-star coming out? I mean, How many offers did he have? A handful before he came and camped at Penn State?
He was a secondary option that they got in camp. Like, they brought him in for camp. That's where they felt about him. And now, obviously, he had some traits. I mean, he was not a complete quarterback. He had some traits. He had, I think, the top spark score in terms of athleticism, and he had that golden arm that, didn't always know where it was going, but like, he had those things. He didn't put it together. He didn't put it together for Kentucky. I mean,
right.
Like,
and they played Atlanta yesterday. Let's calm down a little bit, people. Let's calm down a little bit.
He did.
I was really happy for Will. We're all happy.
Absolutely. Will's great, man. Like, that's the thing caught up in this whole thing of being a criticism of Franklin and the offense, is that Will's fantastic. Like, he's handled this thing like a champ. So, I mean, I agree with you. Just to see more. I said it back in the spring. I personally wouldn't want him as a first-round pick, but they got him in the second round, right? They got him early in the second round. I mean, that's worth spending a second-round pick on. So those traits that he had. But we've talked too much Levis already. Thanks, T. Frank, for bringing that one up.
Sorry. Here's the thing. I haven't even seen him. I didn't see the game yesterday.
Go ahead, T. Frank. Take it. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say I didn't see the game yesterday, and so like I threw that out there, only seeing the stat line and seeing one highlight, which is very Will Levis of boomer bust deep thrower who's going to find somebody open or he's going to throw an interception, and the high side of variance hit for the Titans yesterday. So who knows? Like, again, that is absolutely a wild roller coaster with Will Levis. Steven jumps in here. He says Drew Aller is responding to the coaching he is getting. We need at least a QB coach addition. If Penn State screws this up, no QB for you. I think the last part there is the correct, like, that is a real thing that we've talked about here on the show. Ryan, you went semi-viral with your comments about Drew Aller and how they get the next 5-star quarterback is have Drew to be really good. So the stakes are absolutely there with Drew Aller. We're getting very far off of what we're going to talk about today. But Sean says here, I still believe the team can achieve all of its goals. The adults in the room will have to put them in good spots to play to their strengths. So we're going to get to that part of the show in just a little bit, but I do want to get to the recruiting breakdown. Players that attended yesterday, of course, you can go check out the full list over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Ryan, coming back to you, name a couple players you found interesting that came to campus and anything you know about their reaction, because we're still very early in that part of the phase of the week.
Well, now I'm really wondering what I said about Aller a couple of weeks ago that I went semi-viral. That was
no. This is months ago. This is months ago. You just said like the next way they get a 5-star quarterback is Drew plays great. And
right.
I made a TikTok out of it and it went semi-viral. One of our best wonderful. Anyway.
Good enough. Okay. Guys on campus this week. Well, it was about a dozen or so Division I players. Okay. And out of those, handful or so have a Penn State offer. Penn State had out 4 new offers this week. So that really kind of increased the overall depth of scholarship guys. I think it was, I want to say 9, about a dozen or so guys who hold an offer. And then, I think it was like 15 or so who actually have a Division I offer altogether. Alex Tatsch is certainly the guy who kind of grabs my attention the most. 2025 linebacker out of Latrobe. Latrobe is not a school that, often produces Division I talent regularly. Good program, but not one that gets those high, guys are absolutely going to play FBS level. Second visit for him. He's one of those guys that picked up an offer this week. Looking to catch up with him here in the couple coming days. I don't, haven't caught up with Alex yet, so that's something I need to do here still. But looks like a pretty good physical linebacker, plays well in space. Sean, I would think do you think he'd be a Mike at Penn State?
I would think a box guy at least. Like I don't think he's a Sam guy. So, but I mean, he's 6'2", 210 right now, so that he fits the bill of being a Mike. He's a guy that's I struggle to call him a late riser because it was 2025. He's been rising lately. He's been a guy that really, when you play at a school like Greater Latrobe, you know, a lot of people are going to say, who is coming from, like, why is James Franklin and Terry Smith going to Latrobe? Like, that's not.
We had that on our message board last week. Did you see that?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So Pittsburgh, Wisconsin, Penn State just came in. I think Virginia Tech in there as well. So he got on the regional radar, and this one is certainly a head turner for him. He's been a guy that kind of has blown up this year. Has played really solid both sides of the ball, a linebacker, running back. So he's been a guy that's I think T. Frank just said it in the chat. He's been fun to watch. You know, sometimes those guys will just pop up right under your nose, but also out of nowhere. And Tatsch seems to be one of those guys.
A couple others, T. Frank, I'll take it there. I mean, Desi Jones coming back in from New Jersey, fourth visit now for Penn State. 3-star right now on 3, 4-star in the industry rankings. And certainly this feels like a receiver that Penn State is going to be very much in the mix with here moving forward. Like I said, this is fourth visit now. Has some quality offers to Ohio State, Texas, to name a few. And then many of the regional schools with Pitt, Rutgers, Syracuse, West Virginia, Vatech, schools like that. But 4 visits in 1 year, consistently coming to Penn State. I think he's certainly been to Penn State more than any other school so far. But this feels like a player that I think they're going to be in the mix with for the long haul, you know, especially throughout the spring. And you know, we'll see when he wants to narrow things down. A couple others. Jermaine Kinsler, I got to add to another New Jersey pro. Go ahead.
I just want to jump in here and ask a follow-up question because his film is pretty split. Receiver, safety. Is he universally seen as a receiver, or are some teams recruiting him as a safety? And kind of is Penn State keeping the door open for both in this situation?
I believe wide receiver. Sean, have you heard otherwise on that?
Yeah,
I haven't.
The wide receiver has been almost exclusively from what he tells me, and I like him as a wide receiver. I will say this, and it's kind of like we said about Cam Wallace. Like, his defensive stuff is. I mean, I don't know that he's like a D1 safety, but at the same time, he's like physical. Like, he can play football. Like, he can actually play football, and his size is better than I expected. He's over 5'10". You know, he's sometimes when you're a slot guy listed at 5'10", you might be 5'9", but we've got the verifieds, and he's over 5'10", so that's good to see. But nice junior film, I thought. Like, Ohio State offered him a couple of weeks ago. Whether that's a committable offer, I don't know. But it's certainly a head turner because Ohio State isn't one that just throws them out, especially if they're sub-regional. You know, New Jersey's not exactly where Ohio State likes to go, but like, that's still in the drivable area, I guess I would say. So yeah, I think we've seen some good stuff from Desi Jones. He's been on campus a number of times. I think blue-white game as well. So he's hit some of those hallmark visits. Was on campus for, I believe it was for the West Virginia game, not the whiteout, because Jersey starts a week later. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised when I put on the tape this week to check in on him because he's a good little player.
So who are some of the other guys you were going to highlight before I interrupted you, Ryan?
Sean, you want to go? Do you want to?
That's all you
want to talk about? So with Jermaine Kinsler, I just feel like we have to talk about. Very interesting 2026 prospect. So T. Frank has him there at 6'6", 240, right? And that's what we had him at coming into the weekend. Well, guess what? That's not the case. But it kind of in a good way. He's just a little under 6'6". So 6'6" is pretty legit. It's about 6'5.5", we'll say. But he's up to 270. So that certainly was kind of one of the big things that grabbed our attention as far as, you know, when gathering information from different people after the game. I think Penn State likes him as an offensive tackle. We'll see here. I'm writing a story on him now. He plays primarily tight end and defensive end. But I think Penn State, especially when you're talking about a sophomore who has 2+ years to go, really 3 almost full years of high school to go, this is a guy who's obviously going to keep growing. So right now, yeah, we have him listed as an edge. I don't see that really happening. Maybe he could play defensive line, move inside. I'm trying to get a feel for whether he's in the offensive tackle or not. It's kind of too early to say anyway. I think as things progress and depending on where schools recruit him as, that's really what will determine things there. But originally from Florida, moved up to New Jersey this year, has some quality offers. Florida, Miami, he's visited both of those schools, visited Rutgers as well. Tennessee's another quality offer that he has. And he was a guy we thought would probably get an offer coming into the weekend. So another player to keep an eye on there. And then, you know, last two I'll mention, Sean, quick, is just the 2027 guys, Carter Bonner and Armin Hill. The that we expected these guys to get offers. Hill's the one we mentioned on Thursday, ran for almost 500 yards against Hopewell a couple weeks ago. Some really fun film there to watch and see how he progresses. But this is his first big offer. Bonner, I think Bonner had maybe one other offer. I know they both have UNLV, I think it is. But watch these guys explode here over the months ahead.
Fitz, you want to jump in with any thoughts there?
Yeah, Naeshaun Montgomery and Dia Bell, both up from Florida, got out of town before the weather turned, which I think is a very big positive for them. But good visits for each, return visits for each. This is not the first time either has been on campus. Montgomery, a really, really good player, top 100 receiver. Dia Bell, the son of Raja Bell, we talked about on the show last week as a guy to watch in the 2026 class as a quarterback, really athletic kid, good player all around. So those two kids, I mean, to come up. I know Ryan had mentioned that they played, I believe, Thursday night, so he had a little bit of a window to visit. So getting those guys up is certainly encouraging. Long way to go with those guys, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I think a positive visit for both of those. And then going back to the younger guys that Ryan mentioned, Armand Hill. He's not the biggest guy, but he's also a freshman. Carter Bonner is kind of a different story. The kid's almost 6'3" as a freshman, right? Which he is he seems like a dude early. So it's good to see Penn State getting on those. James Franklin and Terry Smith were out in Western Pennsylvania last week to make the rounds, to check out, Central Catholic and all the usual schools that they will go to, but also stopping at Latrobe, stopping at these other schools. West Mifflin is where Armand Hill is. So like getting out and about and trying to reestablish themselves in Pittsburgh, which might be a little bit easier after this weekend with Pat Narduzzi saying what Pat Narduzzi said. T. Frank, you threw Levis at us, so I'm going to throw Narduzzi back at you.
Fair enough. Yeah, I appreciate Ryan putting the full context out there. I saw your retweet on Twitter. Yeah, that's not great. And then the reaction from his players, it wasn't like his full quote made anyone feel better about the situation.
Yeah, the full context was not exactly reassuring.
I'll tell Pitt fans that though, man. I mean, there's a ton of them who think that is a big difference. And sure, I'll give you a 10-20% difference, but it's still 80% bad.
Yeah, I mean that's boy. But here it is. I don't know. I mean, it's that was really, really tough to see. There was also a comment in the chat about the receivers at Manheim Township being pretty good. Hayden Johnson, the quarterback from Manheim Township, committed to Lehigh, was on campus this weekend as a potential walk-on. If Penn State could get him as a walk-on, boy, that'd be a good one. Like that would be a really good quarterback to bring into your system. 40 touchdowns, 0 interceptions this year. Ryan, I know you went and saw him in person.
For sure, yeah, I went down there to watch Matt Zollers obviously earlier in the year. I left there just as intrigued with Hayden Johnson. Of course, Hayden's been around for has he played for 3 years now? I think.
Yeah, he's been at camp. He's been all over the place. He's a 6-foot quarterback, so going to be limited in terms of the looks that he gets. But he's a heck of a player. Great player,
and Manheim Township is a heck of a team too. I mean, obviously with an away game next week, maybe next week's recruiting pod, we'll look at, playoffs a little bit and what's going on here in PIAA. But Manheim Township is going to be, they're going to be a serious player, not only in District 3, but probably all of states.
We have a celebrity in the chat, Nate Boyer, joining us today, longtime viewer. Just want to let you guys know, love your content, keep it up. Always appreciate it when we have important people in the chat, including Night Raven, who is a regular here a couple years ago, hasn't been able to get on a live show. Just wanted to say what's up. Glad he's here. 6'3" as a freshman, he says, talking about some of the players we just talked about. Could end up being Andre the Giant. Some people just straight up stopped growing in 10th grade. I don't know anything about that, but, it would have been good to be 6'3" before you stopped growing. When we're talking about Armand Hill, though, guys, the running back, I made the joke, is Jaywan Sider going to be done recruiting because he's all the way out to 2026? 2027, for a position as physically important from a measurement standpoint, how does that offer and how does that relationship grow and change as we learn more? Because it seems like that's one where 26, okay, Messiah Mickens is a big kid. There's a lot of things that we see already from a measurement perspective that are going to translate. 27, though, 2027, how do you guys view that offer and that conversation, despite the fact that Armand Hill had a very good showing a couple weeks ago, Ryan?
The same way I viewed 2026 offers last year and 2025 offers year before. I mean, young guys, right? Who are certainly going to come out on the break out on the scene, and I'm sure he's going to get plenty of offers in the months and years ahead. We'll see what happens. Will he camp at Penn State? What kind of feedback do they get from that? How's he continue to progress physically? I mean, that's the main thing moving forward, because I think a lot of what we see there vision wise and things like that are look really good, but long way to go. Let's not overthink it. But these are some good up and coming players that I think we'll be discussing quite a bit. Bonner, very with that size and watching his film, he really stands out.
So a question here in the chat relating to receiver recruiting. I didn't want to put it all on Naeshaun Montgomery, again, a top 2025 guy. Peter Gonzalez is currently committed to the Nittany Lions, 6'2", 200 pounds. David Greeter says we don't need 5-star wide receivers. Penn State needs the right stars. Godwin, mid 4-star. Dotson, 3-star. Hamler, 3-star. Shorter, a 5-star. Need the right guys and develop. He asks, can Peter be that right guy for this offense? What have you guys seen from Peter in his development so far this season? I don't know if you guys have been following closely, but whoever has taken this one and seen a little bit more, jump in here.
Unfortunately, I was sent his film yesterday and I didn't get to it. So I'm a little ill prepared for this question. But from what I've seen from him, there's a lot to like. We talked about the speed, we talked about the athleticism that's out there, coming off the knee injury and everything. It really hasn't changed all that much, which is a good sign. The downside there, a lot of go routes, a lot of just him being straight up more athletic than the other guy across from him, which is great. You that's how you rack up numbers and stuff like that. But in terms of, I see somebody mentioned in the chat, the route tree and things like that, you just don't know yet. So, it's going to be one of those things where I'm not 100% sure. Where on the flip side, it's like Tyseer Denmark, like I think can do all those things in terms of running routes and being quick and playing in the slot, playing inside out and doing all that stuff. But can he beat a guy deep? Is he fast enough to do that? I don't know. So you've got kind of the flip flop situations with both of those guys, because I think Denmark, he's a high 3-star, I believe, with on 3. I don't question the talent. Like I think that's kind of where I'm at with Denmark. I think he can be a phenomenal receiver in the mold of like what we saw from some of those. I don't want to say specific names because I think it's unfair to the kid, but what we've seen from some of those smaller guys in the past that Penn State has brought in, it's just a matter of doing the right things, being focused and all that stuff. I think he would be the guy that I would likely turn to as the guy that could take that big step from, I think they're both 88s to playing like 4-stars, playing like potential high round draft picks, like things like that. I just don't know enough about Gonzalez's, like how well-rounded is that game. But then again, I'm going to check out that film a little bit later.
From what I saw this year, you're spot on in terms of limited route tree run. Like basically it's a video game for him if it's bombs away or it's a short route. I haven't checked in a couple of weeks. Again, same situation. I didn't get a chance to look at the film last night doing T. Frank's film room. Ryan, with this receiver position, I guess to me, the reason this is coming up, by the way, is because on the post-game show talking about receivers and separation, and somebody asked, where's Caden Saunders? And I made the point that Penn State's got a logjam of slot receivers. The whole point of this offense this year is putting Keandre Lambert-Smith in the slot, which is where Caden Saunders lives himself. So Peter, being a guy that plays on the outside, 6'2", physical, deep ball, I think the fit is important here as Penn State tries to restock the cupboard on outside guys in the transfer portal as well. So, Ryan, do you think that's a fair comparison between the two?
Sure.
And a separation between Denmark and Peter?
Sure. Yeah. I can't really argue against that. I do think it's funny. The one guy we skipped when we're talking about visitor list this weekend was scarier-than-expected, Sean, who was a 5'10" receiver, who obviously kind of fits what Penn State already had. Penn State, I will say real quick, just to mention him, they did host a 2024 receiver this week. Like I said, scarier-than-expected out of Christian Brothers up there in was it Buffalo or Syracuse, one of those two. Yeah. Was previously committed to Michigan State, doesn't hold a Penn State offer yet. Let's see where things go. I mean, obviously they want to, I'm sure they have other targets they're trying to hit on. And then, if they don't get much there, maybe they'll circle back on Torrance, but he is a guy to keep an eye on. But like we said on Thursday, man, to me, it's all about the portal. This class isn't, you could, even if you get somehow you get Nick Marsh to flip or Chance Robinson, which I don't really see happening. What are those guys going to be able to do next year with Aller? To me, this is going to be the most important position in the portal. It's going to be where they put the majority of their resources. I would think there's other positions of need, but this is the glaring hole, and we'll find out what in December, January.
I love when we have a perfect natural transition to talk about the game. Penn State versus Indiana. The Nittany Lions win the game. Dramatic fashion, a 57-yard quasi walk-off touchdown from Drew Aller to Keandre Lambert-Smith. So let's start with the offense and talk about how the question after the game was, do one or two great plays make up for the constant halting presence of the offense, of not really looking like they're in a good flow for most of the game, and then suddenly an interception and you rebound in an astounding way. Fitz, I know we talked off the top that you're a little more plussed about this, but let's talk about Drew specifically. What were your thoughts on his play during the game and how he projects forward or doesn't after that game?
It was a heck of a time for an interception, right? And a bad one at that, which is actually like... Yeah. I wrote it after the game. I don't really buy into it's going to change his whole mindset and everything. But like, the more you think about it, it was like, hey, got it out of the way. We don't have to talk about it anymore, which is great. But he came back and responded in kind. And I think that's, something that you've been looking for, because you're looking at all the intangibles. You're looking at him before the snap. I know you ran down some blitzing that Indiana did to try and keep him off balance and keep him confused, and they did a good job with that. And that's the kind of strides that he needs to make to watch that type of film and to figure out where those things are coming from, because he can help himself a lot. Like there's you're talking about Yurcich, you're talking about the offensive line, you're talking about the receivers. Drew can still help himself a lot with things that he needs to pick up, especially before the snap. So I think that's the biggest thing that I look at coming out of this game is, yes, he stepped back, he made the play, it was down the field. We can talk about chucking it down the field, whatever. But like he's done some things over the course of the last, I would say, 2.5 quarters that like you can see a little bit of growth there. And I know it's not like something that really just jumps off the page at you, but a couple of good things, a couple of good, for example, there was a situation where it looked like, it was the one blitz that you singled out where they came off the short side instead of the field side and sort of confused him, and Katron Allen floated to the field, or floated to the flat. And you would think, watching the TV copy, that you just throw it over the blitzer, you've got a completion there, it picks something up. But you didn't account for the safety coming in. He did, and he took the sack, and that was a 3-yard sack that could have been a pick six. Like these are the little things that you saw breaking down T. Frank's film room. I encourage you to check that out, where you've seen the decent little things, and it hasn't all come together so far, and you can tell that with his feet. His footwork not going hand in hand with his head, and his head not going hand in hand with his arm. Those are things that still need worked out, but you can see the wheel, the hamster's running up there. You can see that. So I think that's a positive. With Drew. I still think, we've done a lot of hand wringing about progressions in the last couple of years, and he goes through those progressions maybe a little bit too fast sometimes, and as a result, he's not waiting for those guys not to come open, but to get in position to come out of that break and come open. I think that's where you see a lot of the check down things. So I think it's coming together. I don't know if it's going to get there by the end of this season, but I think a lot of it's coming together, and the response for the touchdown throw has to be just a weight lifted off the chest, and sometimes that stuff does matter.
Yeah, one of the things I was really impressed with, you can check out, is it wasn't just that throw. They were more aggressive either because Indiana gave it to them or because they made a decision to do that. And that's one of the things I checked out today. Ryan, let me
bring up quickly 2 things real quick. Can I bring up 2 things real quick?
Yes, please. I was going to beat the same horse, so you take it.
Can we talk about Tom Allen running the ball 3 times and not going for a touchdown there? What was that? Were they just scared they were going to turn it over? Like, that shocked me. You had a golden opportunity, and they just played for the field goal. What was that?
Indiana ran off schedule extremely well. Like, they got to 3rd down, and they got to 3rd and long, and Penn State pinned their ears back. They went after it, and Indiana caught them like 2 or 3 times in the second half. And I'm pretty sure that's where that was going, because if you do that and you don't get it, you still kick the field goal, and then that playing field evens when you go into overtime, because you just have to make one more play. So I think that, I can see the thought process. Obviously, I was talking to Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, and he's like, I don't know why they wouldn't throw it. Like, this is your chance to do the thing, like
Yeah.
not wait until overtime. And I think there's arguments for both of that, but I can see why they wanted to catch them off guard. And to Penn State's credit, on that third down, they did not let that gap in the middle, which was, kind of glaring all day, not so much because of the the defensive tackles not holding up, but they were running stunts. They were running all these kind of things that really opened things up for Sorsby. And, that it just wasn't there. So Penn State, like everyone was talking about Penn State or Indiana, the calls that they made and being conservative and everything like that. I think Penn State actually played it pretty well.
Gotcha. Just curious. I mean, like I said, I spend most of the first half, most of the game, working on recruiting things. So I don't watch every single play like you guys do. But obviously at the end of that, I'm fully watching every little detail. And that one just kind of surprised me there. I think a lot of other coaches out there are way more aggressive in that situation. The other thing I want to bring up was that it was funny. You were talking about how Drew goes through his progressions too fast sometimes. I thought on the Khalil Dinkins touchdown, he was too slow because he was just staring at Nick
almost
the whole time. And you got Dinkins wide open over here. I just thought that was funny.
I mean, that was like a fourth read though. So like he did eventually get there, and thank God he did, because I couldn't imagine not talking about that. But he did eventually get there. I think he was so convinced that Nick was going to be open in the flat, like I was too when he came in motion. But I mean, that's the processing there is either too fast, too slow, just nothing right on, which kind of is tough.
He's young still.
He's young. Yeah.
If we're talking about this next November, then I think there's more credence to it. But I understand they're over halfway through the season, but this is still his first year playing big time football.
Hold on. T. Frank gave me a point, which means I made a good point. So T. Frank, tell me what you were going to say.
Just that on that play, one of the things I didn't get to, that play was fascinating because there was nobody that had good communication in the secondary on either side. That Khalil Dinkins touchdown, if you go back and you watch it, they're trying to switch onto Singleton, and everyone takes Singleton, and the guy who passed him off in man coverage just sits there and doesn't pick anybody up, which is like,
and he looked right at him too, like he just. Oh boy. Yeah. It's like necessary roughness when the guy goes in motion and everybody goes with the guy in motion and it just leaves everybody else. So yeah, that's my 80s movie reference for the week.
See, Frank, just a couple other things with Drew. And I kind of hit on the top of the show. Like he did make some very good throws in that game. The 3rd and 20 throw to Aller, I thought was a great play. He comes up, breaks, gets out of the pocket, finds the line of scrimmage, able to get it over to Aller, when they really needed a big play. That got him a field goal there at the end. The throw to Keandre Lambert-Smith where Keandre drops it, that was also in the second quarter. Another really good throw there that, Drew should get a lot of credit for. And then, there were others too. I thought in the third quarter where and this isn't a throw, but he steps up, runs, gets the first down. I think it's on 2nd and 8, I want to say 10 minutes or so to play. Like I just felt like we did see some growth there in stuff that he's not getting enough credit for, I guess, because people are still just looking at numbers and 210 yards and they want to see bigger, splashier things. But I thought I saw a better quarterback than what I saw at some points. We're not taking Ohio State out of it compared to some other earlier games.
So this is going to be my transition over into the run game. Robert Parker says, I think our play calling is the real problem with our offense. It's atrocious. Robert, coming up later today, I'm going to be taking a look at the option plays in the offense and where I think Penn State gets into a lot of dead looks, and it's not the play call. Shocker. Another thing we're going to talk about, Joe Moorhead would never run an offense like this. I'm going to point out the exact things that Joe Moorhead did when he was here at Penn State. They're a part of the offense and show you where those things are short-circuiting. That's coming up, so make sure you check that out. But we're going to talk about the run game and the offensive line, that performance, because when you give up a bad pressure or you have a consistent problem, Hunter Nourzad is a bum, according to the internet and everyone that has a keyboard. Going in and watching the game, and Fitz, I'm going to come to you this one because we agreed on this. There was one block that was just phenomenal. That I love Juice Scruggs. I don't think Juice Scruggs gets to this block last year where Hunter is doing some really good things on the interior that you just don't notice because it's really hard to notice a single offensive lineman in there. So given the tapestry of all the things that he did, better or worse than the public perception of him after the game?
It's hard to notice a singular offensive lineman in the grand scheme of things when he does it right. Like when he does it wrong, it's right there. Like, and you can see it. And that's the issue with Nourzad. And you put it in the in-game thread. He's hot and cold. Like when he is playing well, like he's playing really well. When he misses, and it's not good. So you hate to see that with such a veteran player like that. But that reach block on the 3-tech that you singled out in your film room, that's a pro play right there. Like that is a real top of the line type thing. And it's just a matter of consistency throughout the game. And the last 2 weeks, it has been hit and miss, as you said.
Ryan, what are your thoughts on the run game and how it performed on Saturday, given what you saw and kind of your impressions from a high-level view?
I thought Katron Allen played his best game of the year. Do you guys think? Any thoughts on that? I thought he ran really hard at times. I mean, if you look at Delaware, UMass, take those games out of it. I thought he came up just fighting for extra yards, which, by the way, give Nick Singleton a ton of credit on that touchdown too. Fighting for yards and getting in there. Most running backs are absolutely shut down there, but it's still an issue.
He ended the game. He ended the game on a 9-yard run on second down when everyone knew what was coming. Nick Singleton ended the game on that run.
You mean because Bo Prabula was in, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I mean, look, it's still an issue. 3.1 yards per carry is not. Is that? I think that's where they finished. 3.1 per carry is something you got to be doing better against an Indiana team that came in last in the Big Ten. And look, at this point, I don't see there being this. Everything clicks and everything changes. This is going to be an issue for the remainder of the year, and it's going to be an issue against Michigan for sure. They got to find ways to either scheme around it or do something, because this is going to hold them back. And it's a shame with such good running backs. I don't know what the issue is, whether it's play calling, whatever it may be. T. Frank, you've watched it more than I have, but I don't see this. If they weren't able to get it going against Indiana and Northwestern, I don't see how it's going to change.
Yeah, to me, it comes back to some of the option plays. And, the decisions the quarterback isn't making, I think there's opportunities to avoid some sticky situations. I do want to correct, just for clarity's sake, I hate how college adds in sack yardage to the rushing total. Their total was 4.2 if you take that out. So I just wanted to make that point. But it is, I think if you're comparing like to like in college, like 3.3, when normally in college you get better runs generally than in the NFL, like you want your average to be 5.5, not 4.2. So either way, it's not good.
And it's interesting to watch because there's so much traffic there, and it's almost, I don't know, it goes against logic because Allen and Singleton don't lose many yards, but they also don't gain many yards. Like there's like this little, Nate would mention purgatory here, where you're at like 3.5 per 4 yards per carry, and there's just nothing to it. It's very frustrating. And T. Frank, you're the guy that will nail down or try to nail down why that is. But it's very fascinating to see the lack of punch, even with the 12 to 15. I mean, Tank Smith got Penn State's longest run this year. Like that's what? Like what?
This is an area, Fitz, where I genuinely don't have, there's not an answer available on film, because a couple of the runs I point out is you have perfect run blocking. Absolutely perfect. You get Katron Allen, who's had his best day, on the first carry of the third quarter to the safety, unharassed. And I watch them do this drill every single week on the offensive side. High knees through the trash at the offensive line. You plant, you make a cut, you make the safety miss, you get into the open field. They practice this. Jay Wonsider's a good coach. I'm not going to hear they're not being coached right. They're just not doing it. And they're talented enough to do it. So I genuinely have no idea why two backs that are 225 pounds go down to so many ankle tackles, so many shoulders, 3 fingers on a shin. Sometimes it feels like brings down Nick Singleton. I don't have a good answer. I was talking to Nate about this in terms of like, is it body type? Is it running style? There isn't a good answer for why these guys, when they get the opportunity to be superstars, come up as good running backs. And it's no shame to say, but I don't know. I've watched enough to say there's a problem. I have some theories, but I can't, it goes beyond the X's and O's in the scheme in those situations. One thing I want to get to here, because we do have to talk about the defense a little bit. Caden Wallace goes down early in the game, does not return, goes off under his own power, but we don't see him again. I had to do a little more digging. I think there might have been a situation with Vega as well, but definitely Caden. Concerns about that going forward, heading into a very important 2-game stretch with Drew Shelton at right tackle. What are your thoughts on that, Ryan?
Is Drew ready for that? I mean, he had good moments last year, but I don't know, has Drew kind of taken the next step? Because I will say, I thought Caden Wallace has taken the next step this year. And is he a lead or anything?
Yep.
No, but he certainly has improved, especially after last year and especially 2 years ago. But yeah, it would absolutely be an issue, and they can't lose Vega either, because they need that rotation in there. So we'll see where things go. Obviously, we're not going to know much about it. James, we'll see where they're at on Wednesday. But yeah, it would absolutely be an issue because Caden Wallace, I thought, has been playing some of his best football.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Ryan there. I think Caden may have been Penn State's best offensive player against Ohio State, which is not saying anything, but like he's been better than people want to give him credit for. He got rolled up on, I believe it was just before the punt that hit the guy, or it was muffed. Penn State, Riley Thompson's incredible at creating big plays. One of Penn State's most explosive players. But he came out of the game. He walked to the sideline, got rolled up on, walked to the sideline, got checked out, went to the tent, and he was still out there. Like he wasn't being, he wasn't on crutches. He wasn't being, tended to by trainers the whole game. He was doing some balance drills, doing some things where you could see him trying to get loose. And, that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't, of all the things I am, a doctor is not one of them. But yeah, that's concerning there. Drew Shelton came in, did okay. I mean, he wasn't anything that, you would, say it's an upgrade or anything like that, but he did okay. Venga is interesting because I am 100% sure this offense, is at its best with JB Nelson and Wormley there at guard. Just Venga has had some growing pains. He's done some nice things, but he's also like Norzed. When he misses, you notice, and that's kind of where he's been. He came off slowly. I kind of lost sight of him, which is amazing considering he's just absolutely massive. But offensive line, you chip down depth. I mean, it's going to come down with Shelton and Drew, Nick Dawkins, two guys that they believe are, they call starters. But that's certainly not a place you want to be in late October, especially with Michigan 2 weeks away.
Do we want to talk about the receivers? Because I feel like that might set off some sort of fire in the chat. We can move on to the defense if you guys want to move on to the defense. We got a couple minutes left, but I want to make sure that we get everything because, once again, mixed messages coming from that side of the ball, especially with another Wallace going down, Trey Wallace going down in that game, coming out in a sling. That doesn't look good. It's getting crunch time for the Penn State offense, and suddenly the injury bug hits for the first time this year. Of course, as you guys have said, we won't get a ton of information about that. But let's move on to the defense. Let's talk about what you guys saw from them. Are you concerned about this as a letdown game for Penn State, or is this just, as Fitz, you said it, you have a bad week, they're allowed to have a bad week, they can't be lights out the entire season?
Hey, let's hope this is the letdown game. If that's the letdown game, that's still okay. Like, I know you don't want to give up 24 points to Indiana, especially the way that they did it. Communication errors. The secondary was, I don't want to say concerning, but like we're playing on a curve here when we're talking about the defense and the criticism for the defense because they've been so good this year. Kalen King has not been what we expected him to be. There are a couple guys on that defense that, even though the defense is playing well as a whole, you could still see that there's more ahead of them. Abdul Carter is one of them. You've had some guys step up. Dennis Sutton, I thought, was fantastic over the weekend. They essentially played a 2 to 3 man rotation at defensive end. I don't have the Zariah Fisher numbers offhand, but Adisa Isaac and Dennis Sutton played a lot of football this weekend. So that was good to see. Indiana got the ball out quickly, so I'm not surprised that the sacks weren't there. It is notable. I don't know if it's surprising, but it's notable where the sacks are coming from, and they're coming from the second and third levels, which is really fun to see. Like Daquan Hardy lighting that dude up in the red zone was pretty incredible. It wasn't a situation where Indiana had a complete letdown or anything. They chose to block someone. They chose to let him come off the edge, and that was the wrong choice. And you're gonna have plays like that. So yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like it was up and down, but considering where that defense has been all year, yeah, they've earned a pass. I don't think there's any question.
Ryan, I think Sean nailed it. Kalen King, at this point, I think we can clearly say it's not a lack of work. He is not playing as well as he did last season. First off, I know you look at the PFF numbers specifically each week. Just can you give an idea for people that like those stats and like those things, generally where he is this year, and what do you think about how he's played so far?
Yeah, I mean, Kalen last year, Oh, I wish I had it in front of me. I think he finished with an 88, 87, maybe a 90 grade. I mean, it was one of the, I think it was one of the best guys on the team. Maybe Chop was the top guy. I mean, right now his overall grade is below 60, which is a massive drop off. That's like elite level to average, not even, maybe a little below average. So now what does that mean? I'm not here to be Mr. PFF or anything, but just providing perspective of what they think. I mean, that is a big difference there. So the issue, whatever it may be, I'm not the guy to ask on that. You guys have watched way more Kalen King than I have this year. But it's certainly an issue. And I'm very curious to see how it impacts his draft stock long term, but I'm really curious to see if he's able to rebound when it matters most against Michigan here in 2 weeks. And actually, screw that, against Maryland this upcoming week, because Maryland's struggling, but they're going to come to play this week. So if there's ever a time for that flip or that switch to flip, it's this week.
Yeah, I doubt with Kalen it's a lack of confidence. He seems to be a very confident person, Fitz, but like, do you have a thought on pinpointing what the difference is between Kalen King this year and last year?
I don't really. Like, I mean, we expected them to go after Johnny Dixon and expected them to go after Hardy because King was there, and their teams aren't doing that. So they're not, I don't want to say not scared of Kalen King, because I think we've seen what he's capable of, but like they are spreading the ball around more, putting more on him, and he's been left a little bit alone. So I'm thinking he's, trying not to get beat deep and things like that, which is, what good corners do. But we've seen him make breaks on those balls before, and it's just not coming as easily this year. So I don't have that. No.
We're going to talk about the run defense in the front here for a second. You guys touched on some of the stuff at defensive end, but if you got any questions in the chat, things you want to discuss at the end of the show, we'll have 2 or 3 minutes. So best question we're going to put up on the screen. So just giving you a little bit of an advance warning if you're here in the chat and you want to get some question or something on the show. Lack of Chop Robinson. It felt like that was pretty noticeable in the game, Fitz, where you didn't have, not that they've been elite at containing running mobile quarterbacks, but not having there and providing pressure. Again, concern, question mark, or do you think that the guys were good enough that replaced him to ultimately get the job done in crunch time when you needed it?
Yeah, I think there's concern there. Like, and I don't know that it's the pressure. Like, Chop's been pretty good against the run this year, and I think that's where. And I don't know if it's a whole defensive mindset or something like that. Penn State played up the field a lot this weekend, and they typically don't do that when Chop is in there. So I think that is a concern, knowing what's on the schedule ahead of you. You'd like to go down to Maryland and get ahead, but how many times have we said that this year about opponents? You'd like to go down and do that.
Yeah.
But I'm specifically looking at Michigan with the running game that they're going to bring to the table. We talk about Chop as a guy that gets off the ball, rushes the passer and everything like that, but he's been better against the run this year. And I think that's probably where they missed him the most on Saturday.
Mobile quarterbacks seem to be a problem for every defense, but you mentioned J.J. McCarthy's left on the schedule, what we saw from this defense with Sorsby. Ryan, extra concern, or do you think it's just going to be they'll get those guys back and it'll be more of a straight-up, performance from the Penn State defense going forward?
Well, one thing that kind of grabs my eye is between the last 2 games, they played as many. I'm talking about Adisa and Denai. Excuse me. They played as many snaps the last 2 games as they almost did the previous 4 games combined. They played more than the 3 previous, and then I think Illinois they each had around 30 or so. So it long story short, they played about 85% of the first 4 games combined in the last 2 games. So getting Chop back, we'll see if it's this weekend, but do they have to play another 40 plus snaps against Maryland? Because if they do, they're going there. We're talking about 130 snaps in 3 games leading into the most physical team you're going to play this year. So that's the big thing that kind of standing out to me. You brought up Zariah, Sean. He played just 19 snaps in this past game. The other 2 were both over 40. So to me, that's the big. We know the Adisa and Denai are going to play well, but do they wear down because they have to just overextend themselves for 3 weeks? And then again, you're playing the most physical team on your schedule here, November 11th. And that's just not a recipe you want if Chop can't make it back.
Where does Denai fit into that picture after a game-winning sack fumble, yakety sacks into the back of the end zone, Fitz?
Did you see them put yakety sacks to that? That was awesome.
Yeah.
And also, you said walk-off touchdown. You have to credit the walk-off safety because that's what really ended the game. Hey man, that kid's a player. Like he is, he does everything right in terms of approach and things like that. And he's not the freak athlete. Like he's not as quick off the ball as Chop or Adisa, but he's a monster in training, and he's one of those guys that you can really, I think, rely on over the next year or so. So yeah, he's. I was happy to see that, because you never want to see injuries. You never want to see one or two. Even Amin Vanover, by the way, was dressed and he warmed up, which is a good sign considering his leg went the other direction against Ohio State. Never like to see that. But I think getting him back would be a big step, because he would be their number 3 without Chop. But Denai, yeah, I think he's on schedule. He's doing some really nice things, and he brings it, man. You want to talk, like, he's got the physical gifts. Like, again, he's not going to come out and run a 4.3 at the combine or 4.4 at the combine, but he is massive and he brings it every play. He's a high motor guy, and it's really cool to see from a guy that was ranked as high as he is. He's taken it to the next level.
Yeah, I love the work he's done to work on his weaknesses too. And it was a 5-star, but not a guy without flaws. All players have flaws, but he has worked and been aware and humble enough to accept the coaching, I think. Still work to be done there, but you see when it matters, able to get pressure, get that sack, and seal the game for the Nittany Lions.
And be overwhelming. Like, that's the thing. Like,
yeah.
It's one thing to slip off and come unblocked or something, but he overwhelmed the tackle. He made the play, and then yakety sacks. Cue yakety sacks. It's fantastic.
I guess let's get this question. I promise we get one question. We talked about the offensive line and the perception versus the reality. And Chase, if you were here for that, I think we answered the second part of your question. The first part of the question, how would you guys rate Phil Trautwein? How do you think he has done? This is the recruiting show, so from an all-encompassing perspective of performance of the offensive line and the recruiting side of things, Ryan, how do you think he's done so far with this team? And do you think that this has been a corner turn this year for the offensive line, or is it still not good enough?
I mean, from a recruiting perspective, the last 2 years I think have been very good, right? I mean, how many times have we talked about over the years Penn State gets 1 or 2 4-stars, a lot of mid-range 3-stars. I mean, last year it was 4 straight 4-stars. And so is the O-line perfect? No, but I mean, I don't think how are they not? I feel like they're not substantially better, but they're absolutely better than what they were in previous years, right? I mean, I don't look at like what was the chat? Maybe like 2 weeks ago on the message board, people were being asking questions. Was it 2 weeks ago? Maybe it was after Ohio State. It was after Ohio State, probably. But like, to me, I think there's a way better chance of other schools trying to get Trautwein than like Penn State needing to make a change there. I feel like that's one of their positions that they're pretty good at. I mean, are they perfect? No, but I would say they're B plus now, where they used to be C, maybe ID at times. I don't think that's a position that they can improve. O-line's always going to get micro managed, or fans are going to critique it harder than other positions, but I don't know. I see improvement there over the last couple of years.
Fitz, it looks like you really want to jump into this conversation.
So it reminds me of my conversation with Tyler Bowen a couple years ago. And Tyler, shout out Virginia Tech, a nice win over Syracuse the other night, put up a bunch of points. He's the OC now. It was in that little purgatory between Lime Grover and Trautwein. And we were talking, I'm like, because he was an offensive line coach at Maryland, then he took the tight ends job at Penn State. I said, hey, any interest? He's like, bleep no. Like, there's no, like, that is a position, like the offensive line coach position is a position that's set up for failure, like, because of the way the game is played today, because average offensive lines are considered good offensive lines. Like, that's where we're at in terms of the scale and playing against those monsters that those guys go up against. So that is a position that is rigged for failure, essentially. And like, I think Penn State has been okay. Like, they haven't been overwhelming. They haven't been like Joe Moore award winning or anything like that, but there are very few offensive lines that are sort of in that realm. And I think Trautwein's okay. Like, I think it's going to be a situation where they continue to do what they go. They're going to replace a top 10 draft pick at the end of the season. So that's going to be a challenge. They're going to replace Norzad's going to be gone. Wormley's out of eligibility. Or I guess Wormley would still have a year to come back if he chose. And then Wallace is out of eligibility, I believe. So like, they're going to have to turn over and replace a lot. So like, that's going to be something that's going to be testing for an offensive line coach. But yeah, I think he's okay. And I also,
recruited
I'm
well,
also
too.
not a fire the guy. Like, I'm not a fire somebody every time something goes wrong guy. So like, I mean, I just can't relate with that.
Like,
Yeah,
I have
for
faith.
sure.
Like Anthony Donko, like Anthony Donko is going to be a good player. Like, obviously, we got to
Yep.
throw him out there and see what happens. But I think some of these young guys are going to step up and impress. I do.
So I just want to get a couple of thoughts on here. Then we'll get your final thoughts heading into the week. You look at progress from players of individual situations. Caden Wallace getting better as a pass protector here this year. That's meaningful growth from a guy late in his career who didn't show it and then did this year. Olu in the run game has decidedly gotten better. You have to be open and able to take the teaching. You guys just mentioned Anthony Donko, a dude who had very little awareness in high school, coming in and knowing the details. That's on him working hard and being smart. It's also on the transfer of knowledge. These are all specific examples of players getting better under Phil Troutwine, but the end result can't be the judgment of the offensive line coach. Again, check out the film room of the perfectly blocked run plays that go for 9 yards. That's not their job. Is not to beat the safety. Their job is to get the running back to the second level. So we can have a conversation about that later, but check that out. So guys, that's my last piece. Fitz, final thoughts for us.
I like the idea of getting Juice back from the NFL to fix the offensive line. That's been one of my favorites so far. So I appreciate that. We've got an Escobar GIF. Sorry. But I also think the point that KJ makes about me being definitely right is a good one as well.
All right.
There it is.
Perfect. Right. Any thoughts?
Big game this week. I know Maryland's down, but this is not when you want to play them. 3 straight losses. They're going to be hungry. This is going to be similar to Indiana, man. They're going to be coming in pissed off. Well, I guess not coming in. Penn State's going down there. But big one, man. This was the trap game I think a lot of people had circled, and now it's a very interesting moment with Maryland, you know, trying to keep their season alive, really. And this a win over Penn State would potentially do that. But we'll see. Penn State's kind of not limping the last couple of weeks, but not playing their best. Maryland's really not playing their best, but throw that out in this game. This will be a fun one.
That last one got me too. That was pretty funny.
In the comments here.
I mean, they're gonna get Maryland's best effort. Whether they can do that, I mean, they can score points, man. They can score points, and that's been the thing for Penn State is to. I know they've averaged a lot of points, but like when it matters, like it's gonna be interesting. But that last comment was pretty funny. Yeah, that's it.
We will be covering it all week long. James Franklin's weekly press conference coming up moments after it ends. Live replay here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We're also going to have more on Indiana, but we're turning the page to Maryland. As these guys just said, it's a big week. So make sure you subscribe, get over to the site, and get all the information. Thanks to Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder for coming on with me, and thank you for everyone in the chat being awesome today, even including Michigan fans who were non-toxic in their ribbing of Penn State fans. So love that. We'll be back with more. We'll talk to you then.